USANA United. Monica Penrod here. I hope everyone is having a great day today, and bear with me, I apologize. I was stuck in traffic and I thought I'd be home over 30 minutes ago. So I apologize. So today I want to share with you a little bit of information from a book that I picked up about 2 or 3 years ago called The Talent Code by Dan Coyle. I know that some of you watching have either heard of it or maybe even read it. It's an amazing book, and I love what he says right here. Greatness isn't born, it's grown. And I know there have been many times in my USANA career where I have looked at people get on stage, grow huge businesses, be super likable, being incredibly intelligent and amazing. And I would think to myself, God, you know, these people must be born with all this amazing talent. Everything from how charming they are to how amazing their skill set is in approaching, inviting, presenting, following up, and especially closing people, being a natural born leader. And throughout the years, even though I intellectually knew that that was not true, that it takes practice, it takes learning new skill and cultivating that into becoming great. Even though I intellectually knew it, there was a part of me where I still believed there's no way. These people, you know, how am I going to possibly have that kind of talent and skill set? Hey, Cindy. And I love you too. How can I possibly attain that? This was my language. I'm such a nerd. I'm such a dork. I'm not very smart. How am I going to be able to reach my own goals? And because I really believed in my heart that talent was innate, that you were born with it. So I've got some notes here, so bear with me, please. So everybody has their own definition of what talent means to them. And I thought I'd share the definition of talent. It's a special, often athletic, creative, or artistic aptitude, general intelligence or mental power and ability, the natural endowments of a person of talent, or a group of persons of talent in a field or activity. So I started thinking about this, and I was thinking about Michael Jordan and how incredibly talented he is. But he wasn't that talented growing up. In fact, from what I've read and what I've heard, is that it took him a long time before people actually saw how talented he was, but that was because he practiced a lot. And this is nothing new to you guys. It's something that we've all heard and we've all learned. Now, I want to show you something. And Cindy, since you're watching, would you tell me if you could read this? Just give me a thumbs up if it's readable, or if I need to, or is that readable? I'm not sure. So for those of you watching, please give me a thumbs up. Is it this one? Can you read that one? Okay, so I'm not sure, and I hope that this is going to work. So in his book, Dan Coyle has people look at a list. It's backwards. How about this one? I think this one's fine. He has people look at this list. Now I want you guys both backwards. Okay. How about that one? This one's fine, Joanne? Okay, I will post this in the comments. I'll copy it and post it in the comments later today. Okay, so I want you guys to just look at this list, and I'm not going to show it to you for very long. So this is list A, this is list B. Look at both lists. Now I'm going to put it down. Okay. So ask yourself, which list, A or B, was easy? If I was to ask you to remember some of the words from the list, which one is easiest to remember? List A or list B? So I've already tested this on several people, and every single person said that list B was a lot easier. And the reason why is this: you didn't get smarter, you didn't have a momentary situation of being genius. What happens is that on the B list, your brain stopped for a split second and it went through a microsecond of struggle. And in that momentary second of struggle, it figured out the pattern. And so that's why your brain remembers list B versus list A. It's a lot easier to remember. And why is that key? Because a lot of us avoid struggle. And the way that the brain works is the brain works better when you go through struggle and when you make a lot of mistakes than when you're trying to play it safe in life. And so what Dan Coyle found was that there are 3 elements in building talent. And one of those happens to be struggling and what he calls reaching. So how do you build talent? The first is by deep practice. So every single one of us learning all the skills: approaching, inviting, presenting, follow-up, and closing. Those are skills that we need to be really, really effective at using when we're communicating with people. So because of our desired outcome is to get a preferred customer and or a associate. So what's interesting about deep practice, and we've all heard this, is repetition. So repetition, we've all heard, is the mother of all skill. Doing something over and 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 over again. But what happens is that a lot of us, because of the way that we're conditioned growing up in life, is the first time you make a mistake, you get in trouble, right? You get a little slap on the hand. Some of us even got spanked growing up. And it deters us from repetitively doing something over and over again, because it doesn't feel good to mess up. It doesn't feel good to feel like we have failed at something. And what I found interesting is what Dan Coyle did was he noticed that there was these hotbeds of talent throughout the world. And so what he did is he wanted to find out what was going on in these hotbeds, because in these hotbeds, you would see 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 15 professional athletes that were so amazing at a particular sport, or in music, or in art, or in writing books. And he wanted to know what were the factors in these people, and that was one huge factor. So he went to Brazil and looked at probably not even saying this right, futsal, the Brazilians that play futsal. And it's kind of like soccer, but they're on a smaller court and they use a smaller ball. And these particular players are so effective and fast and efficient at dribbling this little ball. And because a lot of soccer players have practiced this, they have become some of the most amazing soccer players. Brazil has produced some of the most amazing, till today, soccer players, professional soccer players in the entire world that are extremely amazing. And it's because they're so skilled, it's because of their deep practice. He also pointed out Mozart. A lot of people look at Mozart as this prodigy that, at 6 years old, he was writing music and composing and writing, and that he was this, just amazing prodigy child. Well, what Dan found out was that by the time Mozart was 6 years old, he actually had studied about 3,500 hours of music with his instructor, who was also his father. And his expertise relied on his ability to deep practice obsessively. So the next time that you think about approaching and inviting somebody, and I'm just going to use that because that's one of the first skills that you learn in building this business, is you got a deep practice approaching and inviting. And a lot of us, the first time we approach an invite, we approach somebody and they say no, or our words get all jumbled up and, oh my God, we don't know what to say. What happens is a lot of us quit after that because it doesn't feel good. We feel like complete idiots or nerds, and we don't want to pursue it. But what Dan is saying is that a lot of these musicians and skilled players, successful business people, the faster that you make mistakes, the more you practice, the faster and the faster that you find mistakes, the quicker that your brain will find ways to correct those mistakes. But there's that struggle that this doesn't feel good, because it feels like failure. And he's saying that you have to make mistakes. Your brain you become successful faster by making mistakes faster. And that's where a lot of us, we try to avoid making mistakes. So the key is to mess up as much as humanly possible as you can as you're growing your USANA business, because you will learn the fastest and you'll get to your goal the fastest. But when we make that phone call and we meet somebody out in public, and approach them, and whatever it is that comes out of our mouth that doesn't feel good, and then we don't pursue it. And we've got to learn how to celebrate failure and celebrate mistakes. When I learned this years ago, before I even read this book, I often ask my 12-year-old son, how was school today? I always ask him, how was school today? What did you learn? Okay, how many mistakes did you make today? How much did you fail today? And whatever mistakes or fails that he had, we give each other a high five and we say, yeah, that's awesome. And we celebrate the mistake. We celebrate the failure, because that is what leads to getting better. So another component of deep practice is chunking things up, dividing and practice in small chunks and then piecing them together to form bigger chunks. So I'll give you an example. If you've ever played the piano or have sang music, or you're a singer, I've played the piano and I've sang. I've done both. What I learned to do was take a little measure of music before I'd want to learn the whole thing. And let me tell you what I learned. I would try to learn the whole piece of music as quick as possible, but it took me longer to get good at that one piece of music that I wanted to play. And so what I learned is to get really good at playing that small little measure of music. Maybe it's a few notes on the piano, and then I'd play it. And it probably wouldn't sound good, but then I'd play it again, and then I would hear my error, and then I would correct the error. And so there was this period of play, it would sound terrible, correct, sound better. And I would do it over and over. And then so I'd get really good and perfect that one measure. And then I'd go to the next measure. And then I'd go to the next measure. And then so now I'd have 20 measures of music that I've played and perfected. And then I could play the whole piece of music all together. And then it would sound amazing. And it was faster and it was quicker to learn that way than to do it the other way around. And it's the same way as we're building our business. One of my best friends taught me years ago, because I'm the type of person I like to rush through things. He would always tell me, Monica, slow down. Slow is steady and steady is fast. And your brain, as you're learning all these skills in whatever it is that you're learning, but specifically in our business, all these different skills that we need to learn to grow, is learning how to get quick and efficient and fast at doing them. So here's another component of deep practice, is learning to feel. I'm not going to go into great detail. If you want more detail, get the book. I'll also post a link in the comments for the free audio version on YouTube. Learn to feel. sense mistakes and avoid them. In order to sense mistakes and avoid them, you have to feel them immediately. And that takes practice, learning how to do that. And then you want to pick a target. So what you want to do is you want to pick a target, you want to reach for the target, you want to evaluate the gap between the target and the reach, and then you want to return to step one. So your target, again, I'm going to go, let's say your target is closing. So you're closing somebody, you're reaching for that close, and then what happens is, whether you succeeded or not, or how effective or how least effective your close was, you want to look at and evaluate, okay, the gap between closing, which is your target, and the reach that you took to get there. And because you want to become more efficient, you want to become better at it. And then you want to repeat it all over again. So how do you get good at closing? Well, you get good at closing by actually going and actually the act of doing it, right? And practicing and role playing, that's all good. But it's different when you're actually sitting across from your prospect and you're actually doing it. And I know we've all been here. We've all been in a place where you had a goal, you made a huge mistake, you forked it up, you messed it up, and then you told yourself, I'm never gonna do that again. I'm never gonna do that again. I'm gonna be better the next time. Now I know what to do next time. We've all been there, and again, it's you learn faster that way, and we've learned it in many different avenues and places in our life. I will give you an example of reaching, because what I mean by reaching, let me clarify this. Dan Coyle says that in order for you to get really good at something, you have to be on the edge of your ability, meaning that here's where you're at, here's your goal, okay? So this is what you know how to do, this is where you need to be, and then you've got to get right on the edge, and basically you get to stand on the edge where you're not really great at that particular skill, but you're forced in that moment to correct your mistakes and get better. And he calls that being right on the edge of your ability. And when you're there, that's what produces these amazing skills and ability. I'll give you an example. I go and work with this guy in Seguin. His name's Brett Dillon. Learning media and video production. It's something that's new to me. I have I have an excitement for it. I have a passion for it. I'm not that great at it. And recently he went out of town and left me with the stack of papers and task of what I needed to do while he was gone. So I looked at this paper and I'm like, oh my gosh, my brain is like, I don't even know what this guy wants me to do. So I'm reading these instructions over and over again. Okay, I don't want to call him because I know he's busy. I don't want to ask the other person in the office because he's busy. And so I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh my goodness. So it's that place where I was on the edge of my ability, and then getting into a place where it sparked creativity. I was able to spark creativity and I was able to move through that task. And when I was done with it, I was like, wow, this is amazing. But had I been in another position, had I not been in a place of accountability where I had to produce something, okay, had I been at home and was trying to, I don't know, let's say, put a shelf together, I probably would have just said, screw this, I'm going to put the shelf down and I'll just come back to it later. So it's important that we put ourselves in that particular type of position. So I want to read this quote to you. We think of effortless performance as desirable, but it's really a terrible way to learn, says Robert Bjork, who is a man who, he's on the chair of psychology at UCLA. And he has spent most of his life delving into questions of memory and learning. This is what he said about Shaquille O'Neal. He said, Shaquille O'Neal, who is notoriously terrible at shooting free throws, should practice them from odd distances, 14 feet and 16 feet instead of the standard 15 feet. His diagnosis was this. He says, Shaq needs to develop the ability to modulate his motor programs. Until then, he'll continue to keep being awful. And that's pretty interesting, because he says that we tend to think of our brain as a tape recorder, but that's a wrong way to think. We need to think of our brain as a living structure, a scaffold of nearly infinite size, and that the more we generate impulses in our brain, encountering and overcoming difficulties, the more scaffolding that we build in our brain. The more scaffolding, the faster that we learn. So the trick is to choose a goal that's just beyond, again, like I said a minute ago, choose a goal that's just beyond your present abilities, to target the struggle, and reaching for it. You've got to reach. Second one is ignition. So ignition, passion and long-term vision is ignited at specific moments in people's lives who have achieved an extraordinary amount of greatness. So that's also, and those come from signals in your environment, he says. For example, you might have seen Martina Navratilova play on TV when you were a kid, and it sparked a passion to play tennis, and you desired to become great like her one day. And so you practice, and I'll give you an example. I'm just going to make this up just for purpose of example. Let's say Serena and Venus Williams saw Martina when they were kids. You know, they ended up becoming passionate and then having a long-term vision of where they wanted to be as tennis players in the future. And another example are these poor soccer players that live in Brazil. These kids that live in poverty, and all of these great soccer players, these professionals coming out of Brazil, they see these soccer players playing, and they tell themselves, you know, this is my ticket out. This is my ticket out of this poverty-stricken life that I have. So they have this deep, burning, passionate, long-term vision and desire for becoming a professional soccer player. So they apply this deep practice that I just mentioned ago with their passion and their long-term commitment, because that's another component of becoming great. And what's interesting about that is, don't quote me on this, but I believe prior to the 1950s, Brazil was not even on the map for amazing soccer players. Once Pelé, for those of you who remember who Pelé was, he was one of the greatest soccer players in the world, who started off with futsal, and Brazil became one of the most amazing soccer teams in the world when Pelé was on. And after they won, then there were tons of amazing soccer players that came out of Brazil. And it's happened in other countries as well. So what Dan says is that there's this breakthrough that happens. It's like the 4-minute mile. I forget the name of the guy, Behringer, I think was his name. He broke the 4-minute mile, and then all these other people believed that they could break the 4-minute mile. So in our business, there have been so many people in USANA that have broken that barrier, and it has inspired so many of us and has created passion within us to pursue being a silver director, to pursue being a gold director, to pursue being a diamond or a 5-star or a 10-star diamond. But it's this inspiration that happens outside and outside our environment, and also that it affects our inner world. So what they found is that people that have short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals, what they found was that the short-term and medium-term people, goal-oriented people, did not develop deep practice and did not become great in their pursuit of their particular passion. What they found was that the people that had long-term commitment, and they've seen this in kids all the way up to adults, people that have long-term commitment. If you're committed in your USANA business, long-term, not short-term, oh, if this doesn't work, then I'll just go do something else. You're not going to be great in this business. You're not going to build greatness in you if you're a short-term thinker in USANA. You have to be a long-term thinker. Long-term commitment equals better results. Long-term commitment with high levels of practice will skyrocket your skills and build your greatness up. Oh, I just almost fell out of my chair. The last is the master coaching. So now you've got deep practice. Now you've got ignition, and now you've got master coaching. And what Dan means by master coaching is having somebody that is so skilled that they inspire deep practice in you. They bring out the best in their students. I recently told Renee Martinez this about a month ago. We were doing, there was a Renew You event. And I remember being in there and hearing his voice and pushing people and challenging them. Come on, let's do better, be faster, be stronger. And for me, he inspired me to want to be better. He inspired me to want to run faster. And when I look throughout my life, there are a couple of key coaches that I've worked with that inspired that in me. And so if you don't have a coach, it could be anyone in your, it could be your sponsor, it could be your upline, it could be anybody, maybe somebody you even hire if you can afford to do that. But you want to have a master coach and somebody who is helping you to see the blind spots, because we don't see the blind spots. And a lot of us are pursuing these skills in our business. And we're pursuing them, but we're not getting anywhere. And you can't keep doing the same thing over and over again expecting to become great. You got to have somebody there watching what you're doing, pinpointing what it is that you need to correct, helping you to correct it so you can get that deep practice in, correct it faster, reach for it, and get better at it. So you've got to have people that praise effort, not IQ. And a lot of us praise our children and the people in our business for how smart they are, how intelligent they are, instead of praising people and giving them a high five for every time they've made a mistake and failed and have displayed extraordinary effort, even if they don't hit their goal, because that's what we need to cultivate. I'll give you an example of that. Some of us as parents, I'm my kid's coach, okay? You're your children's coach. If you've ever watched American Idol and you see people try out an American Idol and they sing, and then you hear Simon say, that was a load of crap. That was the most terrible singing I have ever heard. And then you see the person like tearing up, but my mom and dad and my friends and all these people said I was so good. And well, they lied to you. You need to go find something else to do because they were not being honest. And a lot of times we're praising our children, we're praising our associates for something. We're telling them that they're good at something and high-fiving people when they're really not. And we have to be we have to be honest. We have to be real with people, because otherwise we're sending them down into an abyss. And I'm very brutally honest with my children. If they're not good at something, I tell them, you're not that great at that. But with deep practice and passion and the right coaching, you could be amazingly great at that. So knowledge, recognizing, and connecting are something that really, really great coaches do. Coaching is a long, intimate, I love this definition. Coaching is a long, intimate conversation, a series of signals and responses that move toward a shared goal. A coach's true skill consists of their ability to find that sweet spot on the edge of each individual's ability and to send the right signals to help that person reach toward the right goal over and over and over and over and over and over again. So there's 4 components to this: the matrix, perceptiveness, the GPS reflex, and theatrical honesty. You can read about that in his book or listen to the audio. And then I'll leave you guys with this. So all of these 3 elements work together within your brain to form this stuff called myelin. And what is myelin? Myelin is microscopic. It's a microscopic neural substance that adds vast amounts of speed and accuracy to your movements and your thoughts. It's like broadband for your brain, okay? High speed. And scientists say that myelin is the foundation of greatness and for your greatness. So what's cool about myelin is that it's not fixed at birth. You produce a ton of myelin when you're a kid in your 20s, 30s. And then once you hit your 50s, you start to slow down the production. But this is a cool thing. So when I mentioned that deep practice, try not to fall out of this chair. Every time you approach an invite and approach an invite and approach an invite and approach an invite, and you mess up and you correct your script, whatever it is that you say, and you do it over and over and over again, the faster you make the mistake, the faster you correct it, and that myelin builds itself like insulation in between 2 neurons over a neural pathway. And it can wrap itself, I believe, up to 40 to 50 layers deep. Once myelin is wrapped, the more accurate, the more fast, the better that you get, right? Myelin cannot unwrap itself, so you'll never lose it. Once you get older, you may not be able to be efficient at creating more of it, but once you create a habit, that is a habit, okay? Once you create it, you'll never lose it, ever. And so there is true science behind why all of these skills help in creating habit, and all of that comes from myelin. And so for me, when I first read this book, I was able to I had a sigh of relief, because it was like, wow, okay, it's about deep practice. It's about building myelin in my brain. And then, and that's where true greatness comes from. It's learned. And it's learned through making mistakes and by having failures in your life. You're not a failure. But in order to be great in this business and in anything, we've got to be able to get to that place where we can move past that. And for me, this was a huge breakthrough for me, because it allowed me to separate all the emotional stuff and all the stories from making mistakes and having failures in life. This is the last thing that I will share. So our brains get comfortable, right? We like comfort. We're wired for comfort. So many of you know what this is. It's a rubber band, right? And this is a brand new one I just took off of the little casing that it came out of. And so as you can see, it's tight, right? Very tight. But what happens is here's you, okay, right here. There's you. That's your starting point. And this is your goal right here. Maybe your goal is to close 2 people in your USANA business by the end of the month. Okay, so you're out there approaching, inviting, presenting, follow-up, closing. And so you're stretching yourself. You're reaching for that goal, right? So I'm going to go back to, you picked a target. You reach for it, right? Maybe it didn't work out. You didn't close that person. So you figuring out and evaluating the gap between your target and your reach, okay? And every time you're out there, and you're out there trying to close somebody and close somebody and close somebody and close somebody, okay? What happens is that the rubber band, like ourselves, our brain, wants to go back to what feels comfortable. Ooh, I don't like that. They said no, and that didn't feel good. So we go back to what's comfortable. And a lot of us stay here. But what a lot of other of us do is we just keep going and going and going and going until we get a yes, right? And that feels good. And then we've corrected all those mistakes and we get better and better and better. And eventually our brain is not the same anymore. As you can see, eventually that rubber band, your brain reaches and gets stretched out and it never is the same again. Okay? And my encouragement to you today is remember that mistakes are key. Reaching is key. And within every single one of us is greatness. But that greatness won't come out unless we reach for it. And we got to get in a place where we're not comfortable anymore, where we're reaching and stretching ourselves so that we are never the same again. And it's not rocket science, and we're all capable of being great in our business. And having somebody that we're also held accountable to, who is coaching us through that process. So have an amazing day. Go out there and get that book. I'll post the audio in the comments. And if you guys have any other questions, just type them out in the comments. I'd love to hear who else knows about Myland, who else has and is developing deep practice and skill set, and not just in your USANA business. Maybe you're a golfer, maybe you're a singer, maybe you're a musician. I would love to hear what it is that you're spending time in deep obsessive practice. And y'all have an amazing day. Go build some more myelin.